We're going to get going here. Thanks for those of you who are here in person. Those of you who are joining on the old-fashioned Zoom meeting. Thank you. So I'm going to introduce folks, and then we're going to kind of talk through the agenda. My name is Stephen Russell. I am the counseling department chair. I'm one of the school counselors here. I've got students' last names LE through RI. With me tonight is Brian Mullen. He's got the first chunk of the alphabet, last names A through E. Since this is National School Counselor Week, we're going to introduce y'all. I actually wasn't waiting for question. I'm going to introduce the rest of our team just to make sure, if this is your first parent night, or if you came to like one of our grade level parent nights in the fall, this is maybe a little bit of a review, but a refresher for everybody. So we have 4 school counselors on staff that work with students at all grade levels, divided up by last name. So again, I have last names LE through RI. Brian has the front of the alphabet. Aaron Camden has last names F through LA, and then Heather Rabe has the end of the alphabet RO through Z. With us in the counseling department are social emotional counselor Caitlin Overman, and she works with students across all grade levels and all alphabet groups on more maybe acute social and emotional needs. So if students are particularly struggling in those areas, she might be somebody that's going to work with them along with their school counselor, who's still going to be somebody that's going to be on their team. And then with us this year, starting, she's brand new, is Shannon Fleming Bray, and she is kind of a little bit more of I call her like a support counselor, but she is working with students with a little higher academic need that might need a few more touch points than the school counselors can do on like a regular basis. And that's great because this week and next week and the week after, we are meeting with your students every 10 minutes throughout the entire day. And it's a little exhausting, I'm not going to lie. But it is a lot of fun because it's a way for us to get students into our office that have not been into our offices yet this year. We've seen a lot of students in the counseling center, haven't seen everybody, and we're going to see everybody by the time we're done with this set of forecasting meetings. So we're going to talk to you guys tonight about forecasting, what we're doing with your students, what that looks like. Just so you know, this is being recorded. So if you're coming to this on Zoom, welcome. If you're here in person and you think, okay, I forgot something that he said, hey, guess what? You get to relive this whole experience. The recording should be on the website, hopefully by tomorrow, but maybe Thursday. But you can check the Blanchett Counseling page for that. It should be up there. We'll put the slides up as well. And then if you are on Zoom right now and you want to put a question into the Q&A, please do so. The way we have the Q&A set up is that Brian and I can see the questions as they come in, and we're going to try to make sure that we answer them. We also saw the answer or the questions that you guys put in when you registered. So those have kind of guided us in what we're going to be talking about. But if there's anything that we're covering or not covering as we go along, please put those into the Q&A, or if you're in person, feel free to raise your hand. Like we can do that, repeat the question for everybody to hear, make sure that we're all on the same page. So let me talk a little bit about what we're going to be doing tonight. All right, great. Okay, agenda. I want to talk a little bit about the big picture, what we're doing with your students, how we're advising them on picking their classes, what that all looks like. We're going to go through graduation requirements. We're going to go through college entrance requirements. And then in addition to that, talking a little bit more about the college, like the more competitive college admissions, what students need to be thinking about. Talking about the like 4-year course planning and sort of the trajectory if your students are freshmen, what can they expect to see over the next couple of years through graduation, and then how to actually do the forecasting process. It's a little, I don't want to say complicated, but it's on Skyward. There's multiple steps to the process. I can guarantee your students can do it. Hopefully after this, you guys can know where to point them and help them out with that if they need a little support. I would say if there are road bumps along the way, if there's any kind of things that happen where your students can't forecast for the classes they want to forecast for, they're always just able to come in and talk to us, right? So we're telling them that, we're reinforcing that, but if there are any questions, having them come into see their counselor, that's the first thing they should do, and we're going to solve that for them. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about some big picture stuff here. So just to kind of give you the lay of the land, at Blanchette, we are starting with student requests for classes. So we don't start from teacher assignments. We don't start from what we want students to take. We actually go to the students. We ask them to tell us what they want to take. And then we go through the process of creating a master schedule, assigning the teachers to classes, figure out how many sections of this particular math to offer, which of these electives to offer, that sort of thing. So that's kind of the large picture there. Academic office is going to work through this. The schedules are going to get to students in June. Right. So this is kind of a long process. We're going to be meeting with students in February. We meet with the incoming 8th graders in March. And then, basically March through the end of the year, we're fine tuning things, creating a master schedule, getting everybody scheduled. We will do schedule changes at the end of, the end of the summer, before the school year starts. We do schedule changes before the second semester starts. So this is kind of an ongoing thing in the counseling center. We're constantly talking to students about their schedules, making adjustments as we need to. But hopefully if we can get the forecasting part of this right now, it makes all the rest of that a lot easier. We can make changes as we go forward. It gets harder the closer we get to actually being in the school year. So it's if things change, that's totally fine. We can make that work. Okay, so that's enough about that. Just so you know, we gave almost this identical presentation to students last Friday. So they saw this, they saw essentially all of these slides. There's some slides that are maybe a little more in depth for parents or have a different kind of context for you guys, but basically it's the same information. So now we can say your students have all seen this, you're now seeing it, and hopefully everybody's going to be on the same page. Hopefully there aren't going to be too many questions, but I know that you guys might have different questions than your students have, and that's always kind of a fun thing to help you guys navigate. So I am going to turn this over to Brian. He's going to take you through some of the next stages here. And here you go.
Thank you. I've just furiously taking down notes of the questions from online. They're coming in fast. Okay. You did not cover that past slide, right?
I did that one.
Oh, you did this. Okay.
You're on the next.
Sorry, I'm telling you, I was really writing fast. Okay. So the guiding questions for tonight are what courses do students need to take to A, graduate, and B, get into the college of their choice? How do students select and prioritize the courses they want? And how do students forecast in their courses? We'll cover all of that. Okay, what courses do students need to take to graduate? So this is a slide that details the Bishop Blanchette graduation requirements. So the number is the credits, and you get 1 credit per semester. So the simple breakdown here is if you take a class all 4 years, every semester, you're going to end up with 8 credits in that category. So English, you're going to take all 4 years, each semester, 8 credits. Theology, same scenario. Math, the graduation requirement is only 3 years. Same for social studies and science. A language is 2 years required. PE is 2 years, and art is 2 years. Then the BT there is business / tech. So that's computer science or personal finance. And that is required 1 year. Electives, then there's general electives, you're going to get 6 more credits. That can come from anywhere. It's just once you've met a graduation requirement, if you take another class in that category, that becomes a general elective, and you end up with a total of 52. Some notes there. One of the extra requirements for math is you have to make it through Algebra 2 or higher. Okay. Can't just take 3 years of any math. We have to make it to Algebra 2. A PE waiver is a question that we get a lot. 1 semester of PE can be waived through participation in a sport or an outside athletic activity. Okay, I'm not sure that we have wording on exactly what that means, because I've seen people get waived for a couple of different things, but talk to the academic office rather than wondering, or if maybe that's one of your questions, the answer can be found at the academic office because they're the ones that approve it. And if you do that waiver, then you are exempt from 1 semester of PE. You don't have to take that here at Blanchette, and you get the credit for it still. Opens up room in a student's schedule to take more classes that they're interested in or higher level classes. And that's all through the academic office. Business tech. So there's option 1 that can be done is a semester of computer science and a semester of personal finance. And then you would be business and tech, and you'd be all set. A second option that you could do is a whole year of computer science. That's AP at the AP level, computer science principles or computer science A. What courses do students need to take to be ready for college admission? So listed here is the Washington State College's entrance requirements. So any public college in Washington State is going to have these requirements to get in. As you'll notice, they are strikingly similar slash potentially less in some places than it is to graduate from Bishop Blanchette. So if you graduate from here, you'll be all set to go to a Washington public university or college. Other colleges that are not those colleges, which there are plenty of, are going to have other requirements. We're not going to be able to list or talk about or put up a slide of all of the requirements that any college might have. And there's too many types of categories to even potentially start breaking it down a little bit. So the main answer here is just look it up. Every college has a website that explains exactly what their requirements are. They're happy to tell you if you give them a call or shoot them an email. You're always going to have to look into each individual college's actual requirements for entry. One kind of milestone to look out for is any class that a student got less than a 2.0 in. Many colleges will not count that towards their entrance requirements. They'll look on the transcript and say, oh, you might have passed and you're going to graduate, but that's not going to count for us. So we may need to look into making that class up over the summer or retaking it so that we get above that 2.0 possibly needed. Then lastly, for the UC colleges or the Cal State system, there is an oft talked about and potentially confusing requirement of 2 art classes in the same discipline. The gist of this is they're going for, if you took painting, maybe you take advanced painting, maybe you take drawing and painting, and we count those as the same discipline. What they're hoping to, I guess, weed out is kids that take intro to theater acting and pottery and call that 2 semesters of art. That's what it's called here at Blanchette. But for those California system colleges, they're going to want it to be in the same discipline. Otherwise, they're not going to count it the same. But that is, I guess, sort of changing on a year-to-year basis.
There's a rumor it might be changing. We haven't seen it already.
We hear lots of rumors, but for now, that's how it is. Okay, and then at the competitive college admissions level, kind of the same thing goes as the previous slide about asking colleges their actual requirements. On the competitive college level, sometimes they're not even able to write down, this is what it takes to get in here, because on a year-to-year basis, it's changing. And they're just selecting off of who applied to them that year. But in short, the way to head towards acceptance into competitive colleges is to make sure you're going above and beyond any kind of requirements. So if we've got 3 years of math required, we're taking that 4th year if we're thinking about getting into a competitive college. Same with science. If we take 2 years of a language, we're looking at taking that 3rd year, moving up to the higher levels to really distinguish ourselves, because at the core, the competitive colleges are places you have to compete to get into. You can't just show up and do the basics and expect to compete against the rest of the country and the world. Waiting question, do you want to?
3-year.
Could that be 2 of one and then another year of another language?
The question was, could there be 3 years of languages being 2 of one and 1 of another language? So you meet your graduation requirements with your 2 of 1, 2 years of one language here at Blanchette. That has to be that way. You can't take French and then German both at the level 1 language and count that. We have to move up to the level 2. I mean, in terms of another language, you took it, so that's going to count as a general elective. I mean, if we're talking about competitive colleges, I think they'd see that and say, okay, kid tried something new. They're not going to look at it and say, oh, they took 3 years of a language, so they pushed themselves to that 3rd year. You know what I mean? The different core difference being that 3rd year of a language is going to be really hard. You're going to be pretty dang close to like speaking that language. So going back to level 1 and taking a different language, but the basics isn't the same in the eyes of a competitive college. Okay, we'll go through the course catalog here. This would take far too long to make any sense of just going through each class and telling you about it. So what I'm going to do is kind of highlight the things that are new this year, and then any other more specific questions we can get to. But in the business tech, we've got a 0 period class coming next year. DECA, usually a club at most schools, has been a club at Blanchette, is going to be a class for credit if you're willing to get up bright and early and get in here. Okay, so that would be taken before first period even starts. It's going to be run by Miss Mullen, no relation to me. She's been running personal finance and kind of spearheading this initiative to get DECA to become A, worth credit, and B, a bigger presence. Let the kids spend more time on it. So that is, it's in the business department. It is essentially entrepreneurship club. Don't hold me to like exactly what words I'm using because Miss Mullen might do a much better job. But it's running and starting a business, the class. In English, we don't have any changes here. You've got your level English classes and your honors at both freshman and sophomore year, and then your AP Langs and Lits as you get more and more advanced. Languages, Spanish, French, and German. Give everybody kind of a second to look at them there. The UWHS stands for University of Washington in the high school. Those are honors level classes. And then AP obviously is there.
Do you want to talk about what you this?
You might do a better job speaking to that. It's cool. All right, then we move to math at the freshman and sophomore level. Math is obviously going to get very, very confusing, and each kid, I mean, I say that as a person who math has always been very, very confusing, but these next 2 slides are going to get a little confusing, and they're each kid is going to go through an individualized path. Okay, we don't have like a track that we're on this and we can't get off of it and or whatever. But more or less, we're dealing with every kid, all forecasting on an individual basis, but math especially. Their teachers learn about them through the first semester at the lower levels, and then forecast them into their next class. So it's not them showing up in our office and saying to us, math was pretty hard, but what should I take next? Or that was easy, what should I do? The math teachers who've worked with them day in and day out and know what level they're at and know what they've learned best next year, they handle all that. Should have flipped over to this so I could keep talking. Okay, in art, we have a couple of name changes, a couple of new things that we're looking at here. The musical theater is available to anybody and everybody, kind of a class where we can get an intro to musical theater, get our feet wet in there, taught by Miss Dar. And then we have percussion methods. Mr. Van Dyne is so excited about that one. He was in here like chanting about it. Did he come to yours and chant? Okay. So that one is another open to everybody class where they're going to learn the basics of percussion instruments. He's very excited to hopefully build up the drum line a little bit with that one. Actors Workshop is gonna be the more advanced acting class that's available. What's that last one? Local jazz, yeah, that's a higher level, gotta audition and get into that one. Okay, PE and health, all freshmen take PE and health class freshman year, and then sophomore year, they have team sports available to them. Later on, there's life fitness and athletic strength training. This is maybe easier to visualize and talk about the PE waiver here. So everybody took PE and health, that's not even on there, then you need 2 more. Could be any one of these, but you could also get a waiver and only have to do 1 more. And it could be any one of those. Okay, science is another one where we don't have necessarily like a track here. We have the teachers are gonna work with each kid and they're gonna let us know, the counselors, what the kid is qualified for, what they'll do well in. Maybe they'll even give us like well, maybe if they improve their grade over second semester, we can put them into this. Or if they're doing the same, then they're more appropriate for them to be in this class here. Yeah, go ahead. In some ways, yes. I mean, as the broad answer, a specific one that I was dealing with today, see if I get all these names right, is a student wanted to be an AP Physics C, but they needed to get through, or they needed to get to calculus. Did I say that right? To get into AP Physics C. Okay, so if they weren't going to be taking calculus next year, then they weren't going to be able to be taking AP Physics C. Yes. Attached to math, is that the question?
Yeah. Gotta work my going understand. Sounds like. Can't do
No,
that.
okay.
If you got a 4.0 in biology.
What I'd say is, if, so the science teachers the bio teachers are gonna be placing students into their chemistry level. They will look at math, but that is not determinant for that place. Does that make sense? So
Yeah, but it
it's.
sounds different. Yeah, rather.
We'll talk about this.
But their bio.
Oh, okay. That might be used as.
I think it keeps them.
Okay. Yes, we should figure it out. We learn things at these meetings. It's all-
Sorry, the question for online was, our science classes connected to math classes? And the first example was an example of the time that, yes, it is. And then the second discussion was about, honors chem. Could you get into there, even if your math grade might be low, but your biology grade was high? And that one was kind of a iffy, we're gonna find out more.
I'm taking notes.
We're taking notes. In the back there.
Sounds like science is the teacher is input, but outside of that, I can't remember. I remember maybe it was 3.4, but I don't know if that's cumulative or just the last semester. And then whether there's a difference between honors.
Gotcha. So the question is, what are the requirements for honors and AP classes? And the broadest answer is that I just waved that book right at me, and now I can't think of what it's called. The course catalog has each course and then its prereqs and its requirements. So that we can look into that for each individual question. GPA has to be a 3.6, cumulative GPA, or as I was talking to the freshmen today, cumulative GPA to move into an honors class has to be at 3.6 or above. And AP doesn't have those same requirements because they're all so different, is the short answer. Yes.
waivers can you get?
Excellent question. You can get only one. Yes. Okay, and social studies. Nothing new to report here except for name changes. Surface changes. All sophomores will take a version of world history, all juniors will take a version of US history, and then after that, we've got electives. That, you know, there's obviously that third year is required, but we have more choice in what we take. Yes. Yes, it's lack of.
I didn't have enough with students over the last couple of years, so.
But
AP world history versus world history. Ninth graders don't. So how do they decide which one?
so, sorry, the first question for the people online was, is econ no longer included? And that is correct. No more econ, due to lack of interest. And the second question was, since the freshmen don't have a social studies class, how are we deciding, who should be taking AP world history or just, world history? The answer is, we'll look at the kids' grades, how they've been doing, through first semester of freshman year. And then we talk to them about, okay, so this class is going to involve a ton more reading and writing than the regular world history version. So if that's something that you feel comfortable with and feel like you're pretty good at, then you're gonna succeed. I've been telling them, it's not like we're learning a different version of world history. We're just doing more of it. So if a kid has done well in English, great, they're probably gonna be fine in there. If a kid looks at their schedule and goes, ooh, I've got a lot already on my plate, I don't know if adding AP world history is for me, then we'll listen to them, or we'll look at it and say, ooh, you might feel like there's gonna be a lot, but maybe there's not as much as you think, and maybe this is a chance to push ourselves a little bit. When we talk to the social studies teachers, they don't really say like, an AP is for the kids who love history and not AP is for the kids who don't care about history. Like, it's not that a passion for it is gonna get you through. You're gonna need reading and writing skills. Okay, and then theology, freshmen, sophomores, and juniors are all just in their level of theology. And then 12th grade theology gets a choice of which they'd prefer to get in. Each of them kind of is doing a different thing. World religions goes on field trips to different places of worship around the Seattle area. Christian Call goes to local grade schools and does some volunteer work with the kids there. So it kind of just, depending on what a student is interested in, how they'd like to spend their senior year, some different options there. Yeah.
Just that they're taking it here at maybe the university they're going to, does require some of that their freshman year. Would having it all 4 years here count toward that? It probably depends on the college, obviously, but.
Gotcha. The question was, could taking all 4 years of theology potentially exempt you from a theology class at a college? Not in our experience.
I didn't know if they, yeah.
Yeah, not in our experience, I would say, potentially, if you're starting to zero in on a college that requires that, that's an easy question for their admissions folks, and that I'm sure they'd be happy to answer for you. All right, and yeah.
Our center to bloodshed and it's previous to the theology, and we were told that that was waived. I just want to know that that's, in fact, true and that we don't.
Yep.
Right.
We won't make you go back and do freshman theology if you transfer in as a junior. Okay.
All right. I'm gonna kind of hit a couple of questions that came in as Mr. Mullen was talking. Just to, I'm not gonna go all the way back to the slides because I think that's gonna get kind of confusing. Just an emphasis on UW and the high school. So these are classes where students will actually earn college credit. They will get a University of Washington transcript for completing that course. So chemistry, I believe they're gonna have a UW transcript that says, I think, Chem 103, right? I'm pretty sure is what the course number is. Spanish, French, and German, by completing that course, they will earn a grade from UW. They have to purchase that credit in, I think, November. So they have to actually confirm that they're buying the credit from the UW at a certain point in the school year. Their teacher will tell them what point that is. So they don't have to. So I've had students who have been in honors chem and they're not doing that great, and they don't really want to have a college transcript that says they didn't do well in their chemistry class that they took as a sophomore. They don't actually have to purchase that credit, and they can decide that. Once they purchased it, that's what it is. So they can't change it after the fact. They're enrolled quote unquote in that class at the UW at that point. So there's other transcript implications for withdrawing from the class, but does that make sense? Does anybody have any questions about the UW and high school? Yeah.
So just, sorry, just go back to kind of. Once you purchase it, that is gonna be what you have on your transcript. But when is it that you decide on that again?
Sorry, so if you're enrolled in a UW and high school class, you have to decide by, and I don't know the exact date. I believe it's November. But it might be a little bit later in the year. And you have to opt into purchasing that credit. It is extra. It's not part of your tuition. Yeah. The extra fee for UW and high school, I think, is a few hundred dollars. So relative to college credit, it is a screaming deal. So I always tell students I would err on the side of buying the credit. Because it is actual credit, like it will transfer anywhere UW credit will transfer. So you can take it with you, when you're moving around, if you're moving from college to college, going to a different college than the University of Washington, they'll pretty much all take these credits. They're fairly standard credits to transfer. So definitely great value if you're in that. Anyway, the teachers in those UW and high school courses will be able to kind of walk students through that question. It really only comes up maybe for 1 or 2 students a year. So it's not that, I don't want to freak anybody out, but that can happen. And it might be an option. Okay, a couple of other ones. There was one question that I think Mr. Mullen didn't repeat. It was about the PE waiver. You can only request 1 PE waiver during high school. So they're essentially how this works is freshmen are going to take 2 credits of PE. They need to take 2 more credits before they graduate. They can take those credits anytime between sophomore, junior, and senior year. One of those 2 credits can be waived, but that's it. So we don't do just one of those credits. And they just replace it with another elective class that they would want to take. Oh, that's a good point. Yes. Okay. So Mr. Mullen brought up that you can only do the PE waiver in your sophomore or junior year. So the academic office will not let a student waive PE senior year. And the reason for that is if a student plans on waiving PE senior year, they get injured, they get to come from the sport, they lose their passion for basketball, then we're not left in a position where the student then has to scramble to get that credit. Okay, so you can only waive sophomore and junior.
Same PE class twice.
Ooh, can this kid take the same PE class twice? For the sophomore, junior, senior courses, yes, they can. So you can take multiple team sports, you can take multiple life fitness or multiple strength training. So that's something we'll talk to those students about if that's something that they need to do and when they get into the higher courses. So I think hopefully that's it for PE. I gotta tell you, we spent a lot of time in our office talking about that PE waiver for 1 credit, like not as much talking about like, should I take Spanish? Like, no, it's a lot of PE waiver questions. Good times. Okay, so there are a couple other questions that have come in on the Q&A that are going to be part of the conversation we have going forward. So I think we'll kind of move on here. Picking classes you want to take. So this is kind of where we want to talk to students about how they are kind of prioritizing their courses, what they need to keep in mind. So this is maybe a little more philosophical, right? So we have to think about graduation requirements. We have to think about college requirements. We have to think about how they are challenging themselves and how they are finding that balance, right? And that is a very individualized conversation that we're having with students. We have a little bit more context than the students do. So sometimes I have students who come in and they have done very well in their first semester. And they kind of look at their options for junior year or senior year or sophomore year. And they kind of think, oh, I should take these kinds of classes. And we're going to say, hey, you know, students that maybe are doing as well as you can usually handle like harder classes. So let's think about this. So we're trying to help them challenge themselves. Conversely, we are also in a position where we are trying to help students not overwhelm themselves, right? So we do try to keep that in mind. It's not, there may not be a perfect answer to all of these things. It's a lot of it, we hope, is feedback from us as their counselor, conversations that they're having with you as their families and with their teachers, right? So we have, you know, hopefully multiple feedback points here where they can get input on what they're taking, especially when we get to questions that maybe are a little more complicated. I think most students actually, once they get all these instructions and they look at their options, it's kind of an easy process. But sometimes it's not. And that's when you want to make sure that you are kind of helping them engage with their teachers and with their counselor so that we're able to help them with that. Okay, one thing that we want to talk about, and this kind of gets into you know, thinking about honors and AP courses, what should you take, what shouldn't you take? And we can kind of frame that around this weighted GPA that we started, adopted a couple of years ago. So the way this works is if a student is in an honors class, that's given a weight of 0.5. If they're in an AP class, that's given a weight of 1.0. And that is only displayed on the cumulative, the semester by semester, but then the cumulative grade point average. So the grade that a student would see on their transcript or a college would see is just going to be that number grade out of 4.0 that you'll see in Skyward. So the maximum you can get on that individual class grade is going to be a 4.0, and that's going to be what's reflected on the transcript. That's going to be what the student reports to colleges. Okay. They can also report a weighted GPA, and that's where you include the weight for AP and for honors. Okay. The idea here is that students who are taking particularly challenging course loads are able to differentiate themselves a little bit, right? And show and kind of reflect the rigor in their schedule a little bit more accurately for the colleges. That's kind of the primary audience here is the college. By giving that grade context, right, with the weighted GPA. One thing that we emphasize to students, and I want to reinforce here, is that our advising isn't changing based on this weighted GPA, right? I would never say to a student, hey, go ahead and take this class that you may not be prepared for because you get this weight in your GPA. Like, that's not really how we're having that conversation. Hopefully, that's not how students are looking at it, right? I have had some students who had said, oh, it's okay that I take a harder class that I'm not really ready for because if I get a 2.5, it's like getting a 3.5. I'm like, well, yeah, but like that 2.5 is gonna be tough. Like you have to work really hard for that 2.5. It's not gonna be fun, right? So we do still want students to be picking classes that they're going to be successful in, and that they are well prepared for, right? And they're not going to be overwhelmed with taking all of these classes. So that's kind of the idea behind adding this weighted GPA. Hopefully that context of sort of what would make the most sense for the student, they can start to kind of figure that out in these conversations again with you and with their counselor. It gets a little more complicated when you get into, especially sophomore going into junior year. So you have a rising junior, and then certainly junior going into senior year where they have so many more options for AP classes. That's where it really becomes okay, well, you know, if you're taking this, that's gonna be really hard. So we're gonna have more of those conversations there. Yeah, question.
It's so straightforward. Now, every high school is like has its own format. I'm just wondering how
Fantastic question. Yeah, fantastic. You're almost like a plant there. That's a great way to phrase it. So the question is, how do colleges make sense of these various different GPAs, right? They have, and I've seen 10-point GPA scales, I've seen 5-point GPA scales, I've seen 100-point GPA scales. I was actually part of a group that looked at this in our building before we adopted our model for a weighted GPA. I was also part of the PNACAC executive board, and I was able to look at the PNACAC, the Pacific Northwest Association of College Admissions Counseling. They had a group that studied this extensively and how colleges used weighted GPAs and different versions of GPA. So I got to see a lot of that data when I was working with that with that group. And the answer is, it's an art, not a science, to a certain extent, right? Colleges are really having to decipher a lot of different data points that are coming from high schools, right? So one of the responsibilities that we have as a high school is to communicate with colleges. What does our curriculum look like? What does our GPA mean? So we actually have a profile that goes with our transcripts. We have a very dense transcript with a lot of that information. But the thing is, colleges, like this is something they're trained for, right? They do this work knowing that they have to tease apart some of these more complicated GPA systems. I would say one of the things that I think where our students are set up for well is that we have a fairly standard and understandable GPA scheme, right? We don't have a weird one that like I think everybody gets. When I talk to colleges and admissions reps as part of my job, that's a question that we ask. We get good feedback on our transcripts. We get good feedback on our school profile. So I think we're doing a good job. There might be some schools out there that need to work on that, but that's hopefully something that they're gonna, that they can kind of work on. But again, there's not one right answer to that. But that's just part of the process of advocating for students at the college level, which is kind of one of the hats that we wear in our college counseling program. Yeah. So go ahead. Oh, why do we distinguish it between honors and AP? That's a great question. Yeah, why is there a weighting difference? We actually had, so our academic counselor, which is our department chairs, I sit on that, the principal and vice principal sit on that. We actually did a lot of work on how we were going to weigh our GPA, and that's where we landed. And I think a lot of it has to do with the departments and what they see as being the value in honors, or like maybe not the value because those are highly valuable classes, but the kind of the difference in rigor between honors versus like an actual BP. UW in the high school is an honors class, but that's actually weighted at 1.0 as well. I should emphasize that because those are properly college classes. AP are college classes, whereas honors classes are honors, like they're more rigorous, they're more challenging, but they're not quite at that, like what we think is like college level. Hopefully does that make that distinction kind of make a little more sense? Yeah. Yeah, question back there. Yes.
So the weighted GPA does not go on the transcript. So where do they see the weighted GPA?
Oh, no, the weighted GPA is on the transcript. So the question is, you're asking is where is the GPA displayed? So the weighted GPA is on the student's transcript. It's not in the actual grade they get. So if it says English 9 honors, it's going to say 3.9, not 4.4, right? Does that make sense? The actual grade for that class is going to be what they earned in the class. It's going to be what you see on Skyward. It's just going to be down at the bottom. It's going to be unweighted GPA, let's say 3.8. And then weighted GPA is going to be 4.012, something kind of like that, depending on what they've taken, right? And there'll also be like a semester by semester. Your students, once they start seeing their transcript, we'll show students transcripts. Juniors will have access to them fairly soon. We don't just roll them out to sophomores yet, but we'll put them. We have a whole workflow for that. But they'll see those. They can actually see a GPA calculation in Skyward. I would just a note on this: be very cautious about reading the Skyward GPA calculation because often it will display a live GPA calculation, including their current classes, which haven't been finalized yet. We work with Skyward on how to figure that out. It's beyond me. But anyway, that can be an issue. So I'd be careful when you're looking at like what exactly you're looking at in the GPA calculation on Skyward. Okay. We want to make sure that we're covering bases here. Yeah, last question for the moment.
Okay, for determining class rank, you look at GPA or weighted GPA?
That's a really great question. So the question was, when we're looking at class rank, are we using the weighted GPA versus unweighted GPA? So first, we do not rank students. So when a college asks for rank, we don't rank. I hit my step goal, everybody. That's what that was. It's always great to do that when you're standing still. Yeah, so we don't rank students, so we don't have a top ranked student. Now, we do have eventually when students move towards graduation, we have a valedictorian, salutatorian. We have a selection process for that. For the current senior class, because they did not have a weighted GPA when they started at Blanchette, we are not using the weighted GPA in the valedictorian, salutatorian calculation at the moment. That potentially will change. I think that might actually have changed for the current freshman class. I'd have to go and look at what it's in our handbook. It'll have every detail about valedictorian, salutatorian selection process. But yes, we don't rank students. We tell colleges we don't rank students. And a large part of that is just because I don't know, I just feel philosophically just putting numbers on kids like it's not good. But also because if you look at let's say our 10th ranked student, which some colleges would say, oh, that's the 10th ranked student in your school. Like, that's not awesome. That's a phenomenal student. Like it would telling a college that this is our 15th ranked student, even though they've taken an extremely challenging course load and they are going to do extremely well in any college they would go to. It really doesn't set that student up for success. So we've moved towards, this was like a decade ago, just not ranking students. I think it's served our students better. I've gotten good feedback from college admissions offices about that. So I think we're going to keep it that way. Okay, we can come back to any of these questions, but I want to make sure that we're kind of moving through the actual nuts and bolts of the forecasting. So timeline here, just to cover this with everybody. So we met with students in groups on Friday. We are asking them, giving those instructions, we're asking them to talk to their teachers, talk to you guys, their families, older siblings, their friends, right? And then they're going to come in and they're going to meet with us. Freshmen, we're almost done with freshmen. We met yesterday, we met today, and we are going to meet with the rest of them tomorrow. We emailed them their times. Now, we haven't emailed the sophomores and the juniors yet. They're going to get their own emails. They'll get them directly from their school counselor, their Alpha Group school counselor. And so they'll just basically be told, here is the time that you are going to come down to meet with your counselor. And they're told when that time arrives, you will stand up from your class and you will walk out the door and you come down, bring your forecasting materials, come down and meet with your counselor, right? Teachers have been given the same schedule of visits. So if there's any question about what time a student should go, they can ask their teacher. They have access to that information. But just remind them to check their email. Freshmen, this was a lesson in checking your email. Some of them said they didn't get my email. I'm like, well, you kind of did. It was there. I see it. I know how email works. So this is just a great reminder, check your email. Sophomores and juniors, remind them to check their email. We'll probably email sophomores tomorrow and we'll email juniors, I think like midweek next week, or early next week, with their appointment times. Anyway, it is a short meeting. We get through a lot. Freshmen, it can be actually really short. It could be like 5 minutes. And we just have a quick conversation with them, depending on how well we know that student already. It might be really fast. Maybe you have a little bit more to talk about. I have some students that I've already told, you need to go talk to your families and then you need to come back and meet with me before we finalize this. That might be part of that process, okay? If they come and talk to you about what they're picking and you have questions, right? Especially after this meeting. What would be really helpful is if maybe you guys write down those questions together and then you send them back in to meet with us and we will make sure that they're all squared away, okay? So those meetings are happening this month. And then they are responsible for going into Skyward to enter their course requests. So there is a instruction sheet with that process. It's pretty easy once you get in there. Sometimes the students can't really find that link. They'll get it, they'll find it. If they run into any trouble, if they start filling this stuff out and they're like, I don't understand any of this stuff, just have them come in. We can do it with them, but it's pretty easy. It should not take that long. And then they're done. That's when they're finished with forecasting. Okay, once they put all their courses in. So I'm going to walk. Oh, yeah, question?
Are you sending the materials home or are these the ones you're emailing?
Materials home. So the question is, are the materials going home? The materials have been given to your students. They have them.
Okay. They need to fill those out.
They will fill those out. And they can bring, hopefully they can bring them back. Does your student actually have the forms? I have no idea. Hopefully they did. It's somewhere in the backpack. I saw a backpack of a kid. You got him right there. You stole them. That's good. Smart move. Yep. Got it. You got your hands on it. We have extras, so if they lose it, just come into the counseling center. We have like a stack, right? So they're not individualized. I saw a 4.0 student's backpack today that I would like it was a wreck. And this kid had perfect grades. How do you do that? I have no idea. I want to follow her. That's like, I want to see what her secret is. Had no idea where forms were. Great, 4.0s all the way down. It was beautiful. Okay, so just to run through the materials here, I don't want to spend too much time on this because these are just screenshots of the what you have. So there's a forecasting worksheet that lists every option for that student. So the freshman list is going to look different from the sophomore list. Sophomore and juniors are essentially going to have the same list because at that point, students are taking this, their options are going to turn into basically the same thing. Make sure that students are using the course catalog. It's online under academics. You guys can get right to it right off the website. It has every detail you're going to need to know about a particular class. Answers a lot of those basic questions, especially when it comes to, again, entrance to the prerequisites for the course, entrance requirements for that course. If there's a GPA requirement or even a GPA suggestion, that will be listed. If there are course prerequisites for especially the upper level science course offerings, they will have their own prerequisites for each one of them. So make sure they're looking at those. If there are any questions about prerequisites, they can talk to their counselor. They can also talk to their teacher in that department. So one of the stipulations in a lot of the honors and AP classes or even the upper level math and science courses is going to be department approval potentially. So that's where you get into some, subjective questions about whether or not that student's going to be a good fit for a particular class. I always want them to talk that over with their teacher. Teacher knows the curriculum in their department and they can answer those questions as well, if not better than I can, or their school counselor. So make sure they're checking out that course catalog, read through that if there's questions. The course planning form, this is where they can actually start listing out their courses. I'll show you what that looks like in detail in a second. And then there's a direction sheet, which shows you all of the specific directions for their grade level and what they need to be picking. Okay, so course planning worksheet, again, this is everything offered for their class. At their grade level. Every once in a while, you have a student who's a little bit out of sequence and they won't see a course that they need to take on there. That's fine. They can still request it. They just need to talk to their counselor. We'll help them with that. But this can be really helpful, especially guiding students through from freshman to sophomore year, just to see in each department what's required and what are your options. Okay? So take a look at that. And the number of credits for each course is going to be there. So if you see 2 credits, that means it's a year-long course. 1 credit means it's a semester course. Yeah, question in the back.
Again, transferred in.
Oh,
So I'm assuming that you guys will be looking at this transcript.
correct. So transfer students, we will absolutely be looking at and having the conversation with that student about what they need to graduate. We'll look back and see what they've taken at their previous school. Transfer students, we do a pretty thorough credit check like the counselors do. So for my transfer students, I've already read their transcripts. I did the credit check. I already have some context for what they're missing and what they need to take. There might still be some conversation we need to have about like how exactly we're going to, figure this out, but we generally aren't admitting transfer students that we don't think that we can get them all their credits. So it's just a matter of figuring out what they need to do to meet those requirements. So yes, absolutely. We'll do that. Okay. And then, yeah, course planning worksheet. So there's this year we actually broke electives out of the core requirements. So that hopefully is going to clarify things a little bit. Sometimes we start using words like electives when, even though we're talking about courses that can be used to meet specific department graduation requirements. I wouldn't get too bogged down in that. We will make sure that students are on track for meeting their art requirements, meeting their business tech requirements, and meeting their PE requirements, which is what I think a lot of students, when we use the words elective, that's kind of what they think about, even though those are graduation requirements. So try not to get too swept up in that term. But again, it'll break things out and show you what departments need for meeting those specific requirements. Okay, course planning form. So this is the one where actually what you're going to, your student hopefully is going to be able to do is list the courses that are going to be their top choices, right? So that's going to be their, their math class is going to go on there, their science class is going to go on there. They'll determine what social studies class they're going to be taking. If there are like art classes that they want to be in their top choices, that's going to go on the front of that sheet. the the credit total is gonna come up to 14. Unless you're taking a 0 period class, in which case it'll total up to 16. So that's what we really like your help with as you're having that conversation with students, making sure that they're picking 14 credits. Every student has to take a full course load at Blanchette. We don't have empty periods, we don't have free periods. If they feel like they can't handle a full course load, or if they need some accommodation for that, we want to have that conversation, but they're always going to have a course for each period of the day. But we do have, we have different kinds of courses that are going to be different levels of rigor, and we want to make sure that we're supporting students who maybe need to have that kind of accommodation in their schedule. On the back of that sheet, this is where we get into alternates. Every student is going to need to have 6 alternates. And even if they're pretty sure or very certain that they're going to actually get all of the courses they request, they still need to have 6 alternates. Okay, so there's some students where, because they have to take certain classes to be on track for graduation, we're going to make sure that they are in those classes. Probably not going to need to have alternates when all is said and done. We still want them to list their alternates, because as things change, maybe their priorities change, maybe something happens where, we need to make a change later in the year. If we have those alternates, it makes that process so much easier to get the classes they want to take. So make sure that they have those alternates. We will double check that, but that's just a great point of emphasis for you guys at home. Again, credit check, 14 credits. So some things to think about. Again, coming back to the course catalog, really want to emphasize that. Wanting to connect students with their teachers. Teachers are going to be a really great place for them to get input on, should I take an honors class next year? Should I take this AP or that AP? It's really going to help out if they have that connection with their teacher. Departments are actually going to be talking to students, if they haven't already, talking to students about the offerings for the next year in those courses. So English 9 teachers are going to talk about English 10 options, right? Science teachers are talking about science courses. Math teachers are going to walk their students through their options for math. So all of that stuff hopefully will be covered. Maybe didn't happen for freshmen just yet, but they will be doing that over the next week or so as they kind of get into that part of the forecasting process. One thing that we put on this slide, and we kind of talked about it already, but that is just making sure that we're being really cognizant of rigor in a student's schedule. One of the benchmarks that we kind of use is if a student's going to take 3 or more honors or AP courses in a year, we really want to have that conversation with the student and have that be a point of emphasis, hopefully with you guys at home, but that'll be part of what we're looking at. Now, some of that is going to be dependent on the student and what they're already taking, right? So if the student's already taking like 3 honors classes freshman year and they're doing really well and they're handling that rigor just fine, taking 3 honors classes sophomore year is great. That's maybe what they should be doing, right? But I'm kind of thinking more of as students go from sophomore to junior year where they have more options, we really want to make sure that we're not, even though they can take these classes, not necessarily jumping from maybe 1 honors class to 4 APs, right? Even though they can, theoretically, doesn't mean they should. We're going to have that conversation, but just so you know, that's kind of the neighborhood where we want to really make sure that we're okay with what students are taking and the rigor in their schedule. Okay. And we told them to talk to you, so they've heard it from us already. We're telling you this. Everybody's keeping the communication open. You guys know we're pushing them back to their families to make sure that you guys know what's going on. And then emphasis, I think, particularly for sophomores going to junior year and the juniors obviously going to senior year, a student's schedule is going to be part of their application to colleges, right? So when a college says, if you ask a college, like, what's the most important criteria for admission, most of them are going to say, number 1, are going to be the grades a student gets in their core academic classes and what classes they took, right? So those are going to be like top 2. So the classes a student takes really, really matters in terms of college outcomes. So very much so in senior year, because juniors are going to report their grades through the end of junior year. And then the college is going to see the classes they're enrolled in senior year. So that really does send a message to the college. Senior year courses, what are you taking is going to matter in your application, actually quite a bit. So just that point of emphasis, I think one of the things that we really kind of have to work with students going into senior year on is, how challenging should your course load be as a senior? Because you can take very, very difficult classes senior year, and some seniors think like they kind of get to the end of junior year, like, no, I'm gonna kind of coast in the last quarter of high school and maybe really drop out of those, not drop out, but like really pull back on the honors and AP classes I've been taking. And we really want to be careful with that, because if they have lofty college goals, a college will absolutely note if and when they seem to be taking a course load that's going to be less than what they've taken prior. So that's something we're going to emphasize with them. It is a detailed question. Some students really do in their junior year, maybe they did pile on quite a bit and it was a tough year. And college admissions is in itself kind of like its own class, right? Because you have deadlines, you have essays you have to write, you have tests you have to take potentially, right? There's a lot that goes into that application process. First semester senior year can be very stressful. So we do want students to keep that in mind. So again, this kind of comes into that balance question. This is something we're talking to the juniors about. Really going to be a point of emphasis in those meetings, but hopefully you guys can have those conversations too, making sure that those juniors know these senior classes matter, but we have to make sure we're not putting too much on that or not enough. It's a very Goldilocks situation. So hopefully you guys are talking through that. Okay, I think I've kind of hit these points here in terms of the meeting with the counselor. So I mentioned they're coming in, going to have these meetings. Some of them are not going to be super long. Some of them are going to drag on for the next 3 months. It happens. Sometimes you guys are getting involved. I would say predominantly, we work with the students. They're able to forecast for the classes, and it's going to make a lot of sense. Very rarely do we have to get into having meetings with parents about forecasting. It might happen. So if there are questions and this thing kind of drags out, we can definitely address those things. But again, if you're talking to your students and they have questions and you have questions, pull out either a note card or their actual forms that they were given and just write down a bunch of questions. And it's great because I really don't mind the student brings in their forecasting worksheet and it's got mom's handwriting on it. I'm like, all right, we're gonna make progress. We're gonna do just fine. So that's an okay thing to do, but that gives us something we can talk about in that meeting. Make sure that your questions are addressed. They know what they're picking for their classes, and we're all on the same page, right? And then again, final step, they're gonna put all those requests into Skyward. We will hound them about it. We will bother them about it if they don't do it. Please don't make us do that. We tell them, don't be that kid that we have to drag out of class to do their forecasting. One thing just to emphasize, because this does come up, and I don't know where students think this happens because it's never worked this way at Blanchette, but we don't prioritize getting your forecasting done first. Like I mean, maybe that would be nice if Skyward could do that, but it really doesn't have the capability of doing that. So we can't prioritize that way. So sometimes students are like, I have to do it. Like, it's not the college where you have to pick your classes right when that window opens. The window's already open. They can put their classes in right now if they want to. It's not really going to make a difference whether or not they get a class that they really want to take. But if they miss the deadline, that's when it actually matters. So we actually are able to track students that don't meet their the deadline for their forecasting, and they very well may not get the classes in. So if you meet that deadline, we'll be sure to get those courses in. And they'll have just as much chance as anybody of getting in. We do give some priority to seniors. We give everybody priority to meet their graduation requirements and their core classes. So if a student requests a core class, they're going to get it, okay? There are maybe some small details there, but I mean, that's generally the case. So their math class they're forecasting for, they're going to get that. Science class they're forecasting for, they're going to get that. English class, if they're eligible for Honors English 10, they're going to get that, right? So it really does turn into more of the, if they're really asking for a particular elective, like an art class or fine arts or performing art class or one of the business tech classes, that's where it could actually be a little hairier, just depending on how many sections we're offering and how it fits in the schedule. Okay, we talked about putting classes into Skyward. This is what that page looks like. It's in the instructions. I'm not going to spend too much time on that. And again, completing forecasting in Skyward. I think I've covered all of these things. These are just a couple of dates. They met with us. We're in February. We're working on those meetings with the students. One emphasis here, enrollment deadline. Contracts are due back to the business office February 29th. Okay, so that's for you guys as parents. Didn't even tell students this. Just information for you guys as parents and guardians to know that's the deadline for re-enrollment. I'm sure you'll get reminders about that if you haven't done it. But whatever that process looks like, try to finish that up by the end of the month. And then in spring, something kind of a little further down the road. So when I say spring, I'm talking about everything from April through the end of school year in June. That's where we are actually looking more at how students' grades are changing. So one of the things that happens in these meetings with students is maybe a student doesn't meet a GPA requirement for an honors class. Maybe they are kind of on the bubble for like a language, like going into a third year language. What we might do is say, hey, like we're not going to forecast for that class right now, but let's look at your grades at the end of second semester. And if your grades are up, at that point, we actually have some more flexibility to move you in. Right. So that'll be something that we can keep working with students on. Some students are, you know, like they're growing still. First semester, maybe it wasn't that great. Maybe they're making some changes, trying some new things. Second semester, we can look at how their classes have changed. So I would say if that's part of that conversation, we will talk to them about that. But that can be something to kind of keep in the back of your mind as we are getting towards the end of the semester to remind them if they really want to take, you know, AP US history, and maybe their grades weren't that great. We said, let's talk at the end of the year to see how things are going. Maybe that's just a good reminder for them to come back in and talk to their counselor. Okay. All right. I already showed you the slide. This is just a reminder about what some of these dates are. I'm not even looking at it. We're going to move on. Okay. We're going to do some more questions here. It's 8:06. We're hitting this right on time. We'd really like to wrap up by 8:30 at the latest, but it depends on questions. I'm sure we answered everybody's questions. So, but before we go to raise hands, I just want to plug a couple things. For juniors and families, February 27th is our college kickoff night. That's going to be here at Blanchette. We are going to have a bunch of college admissions experts, admissions representatives, other folks that work in the field who are going to be presenting different sessions that evening. It is a really, really great informative program. If you are a junior and juniors and parents and guardians can come to that event. We will be sending signups for that, and all of that fund registration stuff will happen in the next couple of weeks, but put that on your calendar, February 27th here in person. Unfortunately, that's not going to be hybrid. It's way too many moving pieces to do that by a hybrid format because there's a lot going on. So even if just one parent, maybe just the student can make it, or if the whole family can come, you can divide up and go to different sessions and then get back together and talk, hey, what did you learn about college essays? What did you learn in the case study program? What did you learn about learning differences in college? You know, you can kind of come back and have a conversation about that. So really fun night, very informative. For juniors, we are going to be meeting with juniors and a parent or guardian, or both parent guardian, all the parent guardians, in March, April, and then all the way into May through the end of the year. These are one-on-one meetings with the student and the family and the student's counselor. We will talk about their post-high school plans. We'll make sure that they are on track to meet their college goals, walk them through the admissions process, make sure that they're doing what they need to be doing, regardless of where they are in this process. Some students are way into college admissions. Some students are not started at all. Wherever they are in that process, maybe they have no idea if they even want to go to college. We still are going to meet with them. We will meet with everybody. So just keep an eye on keep an eye on the weekly update, keep an eye on email. We will move right into that after college kickoff night at the end of February. Couple more agenda items. The JET tour. This is the Jesuit Excellence Tour. I know it's a redundant title, but that's what they call it. It's a little mini college fair with usually 12 to 15 Jesuit colleges that will do a little small college fair here at Blanchette. It's either going to be May 1st or 2nd. We haven't gotten the date exact on that at the time. We'll let students know. We want sophomores and juniors, and we might even have freshmen come in. It kind of depends on when during the day it is. So if they haven't done a college fair yet, or maybe they don't have any interest in doing college prep. But if they're just kind of getting into the college admissions process, it's a great small scale way to learn more about some of these schools. Like Gonzaga, Santa Clara, Marquette usually comes. Any of the various Loyolas are going to be here. So it'll be a lot of fun. Xavier. So it, not a huge selection of colleges, but ones that a lot of our students apply to. So that'll be fun. MAC Fund, the Multicultural Affairs Council, night is May 17th. Mark your calendars. Amazing program, lots of food, lots of cultural exchange. Everybody's welcome. Highlight of my kids' childhood, frankly, bringing them to that event over the years. So great time for everybody. And then also, this is my plug. If you've heard my parent nights before, plug for host families for our international program. We're always looking for new host families. Does not have to be a Blanchette family. If you have, if one of your, if your brother and sister-in-law have extra room in the house, right? Or if you know somebody who's an empty nester and would love to make their home open to one of our international students, please talk to them. Reach out to Miss Valenzuela Carden, our Director of International Program. She can answer any questions that you might have. We have a really great view book for that program. My family, when I was growing up, hosted international students all the time. We're still friends with a lot of those folks that stayed with us. Super rewarding, really great for families. So please keep that in mind. Okay, so let's kind of do some Q&A. Mr. Mullen, maybe you can just you can read questions. I'm gonna see if I can pull some up here, and we're gonna do our best. If you guys, maybe we can start with a question in here. Yes. Oh yeah. I'll move that up. Yeah, great. Okay. Yeah, question. Oh, that's a good question. My understanding, does anybody have a zero period student in here? Yeah, can you answer that question? I have no idea. They're here before I get up, so I don't. Yeah. No zero period late starts. There we go. Thank you. Yeah. And there is a little more flexibility with zero period, just depending, because we actually have more zero period times during the year than a normal course would need. So there is a little bit of flexibility there, but yeah, not late starts. So they don't have zero period. Okay. Oh, there's the deadlines or dates and deadlines. Yes. Any other questions in the room? We can go to one of these. Mr. Mullen, do we have a question in the queue there?
Yeah, we have a lot of people asking to talk a little bit more detail about taking an AP class and getting like a B.
Oh, yeah.
Regular class again.
Okay, so that's the question every year, and we have to figure it out. So if you as a student, is it better to get an A in a non-honors class or a B in an honors class? And I think that's it. It's not quite as easy as that. I think that it kind of depends on the student. I don't think we really want a student, if the student is worried about maybe getting a B, or they're worried about what if I get a C or a D, that's something that we want to avoid, right? So we definitely don't want to put a student in a situation where they are trying to scrape through a year and maybe earn a B, right? I think we really want to have some confidence going into that class to say, hey, I may not get 4.0, but I'm pretty sure I can get a 3.8, right? And they can, again, talk to teachers, talk to their counselor. We can kind of help them get a gauge of that if there's, really, if that becomes that kind of question. But if they're worried, it might be hard for me to get a 3.0, that's where, probably isn't a good thing, okay? I know that's not a very specific answer. It's not really a yes or a no question. College admissions officers get asked this all the time, because a student might say, hey, for your admissions office, is it better for me to have a B in an AP class or an A in a non-AP class? And they're going to say it's better for you to have an A in an AP class. That's not helpful. So thankfully at Blanchette, we have a breadth of options, right? So I really do feel that once we actually get to the point where students are picking their classes, especially again, junior and senior year, where they have way more options, that we're able to maybe not fine tune, but I feel like they have enough options where they can have the right amount of rigor. It's not a matter of saying, all of your classes are gonna be hard, or they're all going to be non-honors, right? There is a range there. Hopefully, again, with conversation with you, with their counselor, we're able to make sure that they're not gonna ratchet that up too much, right, in those years. But that's kind of the idea. Like, we do want to have balance. We do want them to be challenging themselves. I definitely don't like it when students are not taking any, they're getting great grades and they're not in any honors or AP classes. Like, I don't like that. I don't think you guys really want that either, right? So that's something that we definitely watch out for, and wanting students to be able to appropriately push themselves. We do look at their extracurriculars too. You know, that's the other thing. We have students who are very, very busy. We have to factor that in as well. So it may not be just one class. Should I take an honors or non-honors, or an AP or non-AP? It's actually going to be a big picture look at their whole schedule and everything they're involved in. All right. Got another one there?
About psychology,
Oh,
it's just not on here. How many credits?
oh, psychology, questions about psychology. And it might be if you have a ninth grader, they're not going to see psychology as an option. So psychology is in the social studies department, it's one semester, so just one credit. And it's only offered junior, senior year. It's a very popular elective. A lot of students want to get into it. But yeah, that's going to be junior, senior year. And it doesn't meet the social studies graduation requirement. So it would have to be one we got to make sure that they have met their like business tech, they've met their core or that sort of. Yeah.
Off the wall, but service hours, how many, do they look at those and how many do they need? Is it every year?
Okay, great question. So I'll give you my speech on service hours. So the question about service hours, how many do they need? How is that calculated and recognized? So students need 20 hours of service every year. I think, so this is where I'm a little out of my depth because we've changed it almost every year in the last like 5 years. And I can't keep them all in my head. All I will say though is check the website. They have a great description of the service program and specifically what it goes into those 20 hours and what students need to take. And then they have to log that through our service portal. I think those are all due for the year, I believe in May. So if they're still working on those 20 hours, let's get that ball rolling right now. So here's kind of something for you guys to know. The service learning department will communicate this to students, but I'll just tell you guys since we're talking about it. The place where that's recorded is on the student's transcript. Down at the bottom, it says grade 9 service requirement met. And it's going to be a yes, grade 9, yes, grade 10, yes, grade 11, yes, grade 12, right? It might say no if they don't meet those requirements,
So
right?
it's not 10 and 10 each semester.
Correct. It is not 10 and 10 yet. The question is 10 and 10 each semester. It's not. You can do 20 hours the day before they're due. Theoretically, don't do that. But you could. I've had students who have really backloaded their service hours. I have other students who are doing so much service they don't even, I mean, they barely even keep track anymore because they're going to blow through their service hours requirements very quickly. If your student has questions about service hours, they need to walk into the campus ministry office and say to anybody that's present, I need help with my service requirement, and they will get bombarded with support. So that's what I tell them to do. Mr. Carlson in campus ministry is fantastic. He coordinates the service learning program. He can answer any questions that student might have, but he'll be up there. Any of the other campus ministry folks can answer questions about service hours. Helps. They do a great job helping students with placements. So if your student's sitting there like they don't know what to do, talk to Mr. Carlson. He'll get you set up. Okay. Yeah. So thanks for asking. That's one. It's not really forecasting related, but I think it's a graduation requirement. We got to talk about it, right? So make sure that those are covered. Got me. Oh, yeah, right there.
Sorry, I have that.
Oh boy, all right, great, let's go. Roll it back.
My
Great question. So when do you actually do the PE waiver? So if your student is requesting a PE waiver, they don't have to do anything during forecast. They can just pick whatever they want to pick. So if they're going into junior year and they want to pick their art and maybe they're taking AP computer science junior year, just forecast for that. But they will need to remember, they need to, at the start of their season, they need to fill out a form in the academic office. We make a million announcements about this over the intercom. We'll send emails. It's even in the weekly updates. So you guys get those reminders. So at the start of the season, they have to fill a form out, and then there's a very simple form at the end of the season. Mr. Mullen didn't know the answer to this. He's new, guys. It's just a little, but if you're doing an outside sport, it's 70 hours in that semester. So if sometimes students are like, I take an hour of karate a week, that is, you're not going to get 70 hours, right? So you actually, it's a fairly rigorous expectation for an outside sport, but plenty of students do it, especially like dance. We have dancers that, you know, they'll do 70 hours in like 2 weeks, right? So there's plenty of activities that will qualify, but you do have to make sure there's an additional like logging process for outside sports.
So there are rules.
There are indeed rules, Mr. Mullen. Yes.
I only said what I said because I've seen kids have karate.
Yep.
And they did their
They
70 hours.
do. They get 70 hours for karate. Yeah.
I've seen all sorts of things come across my desk.
All sorts of, there are plenty of options for those outside sports. But I would say just from like a paperwork perspective, if they're doing a blanchette sport, that's the easiest one. So just if they're thinking, okay, next year I'm going to do track, but I'm also doing karate, like I would just do the track, right? It's just gonna be so much easier than logging hours. You have to have your like instructor or somebody signing off on those hours. It's just the paperwork gets a little onerous. So if they're doing a blanchette sport, just do the blanchette sport. Oh, back there, yeah.
Can it be a club sport they do over the summer? Does that count, or does it have to be during the school year?
So the requirement, so the question is going to be a club sport over the summer, or does it have to be during the school year? So the PE department sets this policy, and they say it has to be over the school year. And it has to do with their curriculum. It's a replacement for their curriculum, if that makes sense. So the PE department is their waiver that they are putting out there, but it has to be tied into the school year. So you can't do a summer. I know some students are doing, you know, they're going to do soccer all summer, but they'll probably be doing soccer during the school year too. So that makes sense. Yeah.
So I probably already, but say outside basketball starts in fall.
Mhm.
It's the spring.
Oh, great question.
That's
Yeah.
across the-
So if you have a sports, the question is if you have a sport that like goes over 2 semesters, just have them talk to the academic office. They'll make it. Yeah, it's just a matter of when you start that process. Yeah. Okay, Mr. Mullen, you have any questions on there? How we do it? We have a lot of questions, but I think we have a few that are.
One great chat.
Hey, all right.
Just to clarify, the UW classes here, the honors classes, when they go to, if that student went to the University of Washington, is the class they took here being calculated in the GPA?
Okay, so UW in the high school, if a student gets the UW in the high school credit, what does that look like when if they actually go to, let's say, University of Washington? It's going to be on their University of Washington transcript. So it will be, you know, it'll be like spring quarter 2025, right? Chem 103A. And then 3 years later, they'll have the rest of their transcript filled out by their freshman year classes, right? So yeah, it will be on their University of Washington transcript, official transcript. It'll look like every other class they take. It
can't go to a different college.
No so yes, the question is about transferring. It will transfer exactly the same as a UW class will transfer. So if that school, let's say they transfer to, I don't know, University of Michigan. If University of Michigan takes Chem 103, they'll take the UW in the high school Chem 103. It's handled exactly the same way. Yeah, and those credits will transfer to, you know, pretty much anywhere. Yeah, they travel really well. Any other questions, Mr. Mullen? Okay, here I can see these now. So we're kind of making some progress here. Requirements. Okay, California art requirement. We just an emphasis on this. It was a question. So two classes in the same art. So we're just talking about the state schools in California, and they have to be in the same discipline, 2 credits, but they don't have to be back to back. So they could be like, you could take drawing freshman year and painting senior year, and those are going to count. If students have questions about that, just have them come in and talk to us. I know that can be confusing. A lot of students don't even know if they want to apply to state schools in California. but some just want to kind of keep their options open if they're considering it. We're not even talking about private colleges in California, so like Santa Clara, Pepperdine, Loyola Marymount, they have their own art requirements. They are not that stringent. And again, you know, like by the time if you have a freshman, by the time they're going to colleges, this policy sounds like is going to be changing. I would love to have had that updated this year, but I have not seen anything in writing from an actual college. I have heard it from their admissions offices. I said, can you put that in writing? And they say, not yet. Okay, well, I have to tell people anyway. It's the whole thing. So hopefully soon we'll get some sanity with that, because that is always a big question for us, and we would like to simplify it. Enrollment contracts. It was a question that came up on the Q&A. I don't know where to find them. If you have questions about that, contact Mr. Ramsey or go to the parent page in the Blanchette website. So that's where I would go for it. Parent page, Blanchette website, take a look at that, and we'll have all the forms and documents that you're going to need. And if there's any questions, reach out to the business office. Then I just asked them when they were due, and I gave you that information. I have no idea. You guys, I have an 8th grader. I'm probably going to be a Blanchette parent next year, which is very exciting for me, but I have no idea how any of this stuff works. I've been here for 17 years, so it's going to be very embarrassing. I can't help my kid with a lot of this stuff. Okay, let's see here. So, Mr. Mullen, any other ones that we have? I think it looks like we kind of hit a lot of them. Okay. All right. Okay. I'm going to do one plug here because this was a question that came up. And I have my head in my hands because I'm going to talk about SAT and ACT here for a second. So, colleges. So this is as you probably have seen in the news, a developing situation. Post-pandemic, pretty much every college was optional for standardized tests for admission, right? So they didn't require SAT or ACT. Many colleges have made that change permanent. So there are lots of colleges in the United States that will no longer in perpetuity require a standardized test for admission. Some colleges have even gone so far as to become test blind, where they will not, you can send a score and they will not even look at it, right? Not be part of your application. So there's that end of the spectrum over here where there's no required test and some colleges don't even look at tests. We are seeing as we expected in college admissions, we are seeing a drift back towards requiring standardized tests. And, you know, there's lots of arguments for that. There's lots of arguments against it. Dartmouth just announced they are going to return to requiring it. MIT still has kind of always required it, even though they said they kind of didn't. Georgia Tech has required it throughout the pandemic. All of the service academies have continued to require standardized tests, even during the heat of the pandemic, which was just really a lot of fun to help kids deal with that. So we are still seeing a kind of maybe a bit of a pendulum swing back towards testing, which is why we are still offering and requiring students to take the PSAT. Everybody, freshmen, sophomores, juniors, took it in the fall. We are offering a spring school day SAT for juniors. We are at this point, we're just offering that one junior year. We are going to be evaluating whether or not we need to be offering more of those as we move through this process with the colleges. But we're still offering that one here, just the SAT. Some folks ask about ACT. ACT has some different, just kind of different modalities and how they're doing things with their testing scheme. So we haven't been offering ACT. We very well may return to doing that. But that's still, we're basically year to year right now with all of the test prep stuff, all of the kind of advising. We're going to give you guys this information as we get it. You guys are probably going to see it in the news as quickly as we will. But it is still, you know, from our advising perspective and what we're doing with students, we do still want students to keep an eye on testing, right? Especially freshman year, sophomore year, and junior year as they're doing these practice tests, because they don't really know where they're applying yet, right? They don't know what's going to be required. They don't know what's going to be recommended. So we just want to kind of like at least have that exposure so that when they get to junior year and they're looking at colleges, they do have something to go off of if they end up wanting to move down that path. Just to give you guys a little context, pre-pandemic, 99% of our students took at least one SAT or ACT. 75% took multiple tests, so they took like multiple SATs or an SAT and an ACT. About half took both SAT and ACT. In the last admission cycle, 20 kids took the SAT or the ACT. That was it, 20 kids. SAT, about half the class, maybe edging up to like 60% of the class, this current senior class, has taken an SAT, a real SAT. So that's, our numbers are way down. They were way like 40%, I think, in 2021 took an SAT or an ACT. So it's kind of, we're swinging back, colleges are swinging back. It's not going to go all the way though, right? So it has changed. Our advising with students has changed. So we are trying to be a little more individualized when it comes to how we're advising students with what tests to take, when to take them, how should they be sending those scores in, should they not? That's very individualized to students as we get into that process with them. We have a lot of data that we're using to help advise them. So it's going to be way more individualized with students in really like spring of junior year all the way through senior year. So good news is there are some students who are not going to have to take a test, and that's great for them, right? Testing was going to stress them out. They were probably not going to do that great, right? Because they weren't great test takers to begin with. So it's going to save them. They're going to go to colleges that they love, and they're never going to have to fill in a bubble or figure out how to do all those like tricky math problems on the SAT. But there are definitely going to be some students who are going to take these tests, do a lot of test prep, and not actually use those scores, which seems frustrating, but that's might be the situation your students are in. So again, a lot more subjectivity with that. All right, I'm just gonna end it there. Like that was about it. It's 8:31. I really appreciate you guys being here. Safe travels. Please if there are any questions, have your students come talk to their counselor and we'll talk. Thanks, folks. Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks everybody on Zoom. Hopefully this worked.